injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
I feel like 2024 is going to be magical.
Fish on First Live, presented to you by Burger and Hicks. Make sure to go check them out at burgerandhicks.com. You can also contact them with all of the links below. Fish on First Live, we are back. New series, Marlins and Tigers. First time in a very long time the Marlins are traveling over to Detroit. We have kind of our usuals here. We have Eli Sussman, Alex Krutchik, Nate, Nate, and we have our super sub special guest, Nicholas Milton. Nicholas, what's up? We're excited to have you on, man.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course.
Right. Yeah, let's take a look back at this last series, Marlins and Phillies. I think as almost all of us predicted that the Phillies would win 2 out of 3. We had Trevor in game 1, Lardo game 2, and then the debut of Braxton Garrett in game 3. Krutchik, let's talk about game 3. Braxton Garrett gives up 5 earned, but I don't think the box score, the final line in this case, really shows how good Braxton Garrett was.
Yeah, Braxton ran into some trouble in the first inning with Nick Castellanos' home run, and that was really it for him. He was using all of his pitches, and all of his pitches looked pretty good. I mean, they all looked serviceable, while some of them just looked good in general. He settled down, which was nice to see, especially with the adrenaline and the long layoff of not having pitched since last October. So it was nice to see that he was able to settle himself down after that rough first inning.
Yeah, Nate, talk to us a little bit about the offense here. We had the Marlins had 7 runs in that game, the most they've scored in this series in what feels like a very long time. I believe this was, just an overall good offensive game. You had the Emmanuel Rivera walk-off. I believe Jazz had himself a couple hits, so definitely good to see the offense get it going in this game.
Yeah, for sure, especially after the first 2 games, very slow, especially with the Phillies coming out hot. Marlins really couldn't get much going, but you saw after the Nick Castellanos home run, Josh Bell answered right back, and so did Jazz, and so did the rest of the Marlins offense. It was definitely a team effort, and it's what you need to see more of, especially if you're a Marlins fan. And like you said, Emmanuel Rivera, a win's a win, especially for the Marlins. The Marlins need the wins right now, and he did it for him. And hopefully they can keep not just the top of the lineup, but the bottom of the lineup rounding it out to keep producing runs.
Yeah, and we should shout out Jazz. Yeah, go ahead, Krutchik.
Oh, sorry, no, just what was nice going off what Nate said was also they didn't spiral. Like, this is a team this year that is just very fragile, it seems. Not as individuals, but as a team, to where they have often given up early leads that they've gotten, and then it just goes downhill from there. This game, they continued to fight. They continued to fight back, and even in the 9th and 10th innings, it didn't look like the game was really – it didn't feel like the Phillies were going to get the late run on them.
Yeah, I did want to touch on Jazz. I don't think we've shown him a whole lot of love this year just based on where the expectations were for him and how he's performed to this point. I think as of a few days ago, you look at his overall season and say that it was underwhelming, especially for a guy that has been, for a change, really healthy so far. And especially with this series, all of a sudden you look up and it's a 116 WRC plus. It's a good combination of both the power and the base running as well. So I guess some of it comes down to how you feel about his defense, all things considered. But offensively, he has, I think, the lowest strikeout rate of his whole career. He has the highest walk rate of his whole career, and that is the ideal combination right there. So this is the weekend where it really struck me that he maybe is taking some actual steps forward that we haven't seen him take before, or at least not be consistent with. And that's a pretty big development, whether he's going to be a piece to build around or if he's going to be a trade chip these next couple of months, it's a big difference, and it's good to see, because it was a little bit concerning the way he performed up to this point in the season. He had been, you guys remember, he usually starts hot every single year, and it just comes down to when he's going to get hurt and what's it going to look like when he comes back from that injury. And this year it started off slow, and now he's kind of getting where he should be. And now you reach the exciting portion where you wonder, is there a new level of excellence that he reaches if he continues to stay healthy? But that's from this weekend is when I really started to get really hopeful about what Jazz is trending towards.
Yeah, and you mentioned his
As a
walking
fielder, what do you guys?
Oh, sorry, I'll go. You mentioned when Jazz is at his best, he's usually working hounds a lot and like getting his pitch late in the at bat, especially against guys that he's not been good against, like Wheeler and Suarez in his career. He said early in spring training that Ranger Suarez is the hardest guys that have faced, and he looked better. So you can see that he's making progress, and it is very encouraging. Like Eli said, if you want to trade him or build around him, so it's definitely encouraging from Jazz.
What were you gonna say, Kretschik?
From the defensive side of things, what do you got the idea of moving him back to second base now that, remember, the only reason the Jazz was out there was because of a rise, and now you don't have a rise. So perfect picture. So what would your guys' thoughts be on moving him back to second base?
So it's funny because I was on a podcast today and I was asked the same exact question, and there's the positives and the negatives. I guess the positive would be you get Dane Myers in the lineup. I think people want Dane Myers in there to play every day. Ideally, that would be the ideal move. You put Otto Lopez in that sort of utility role, kind of what they had Brujan in. But then you tell yourself, I mean, Jazz had one good year in center field, which was that 2023 year, his first season there. He's not looked really good this season, but I guess if you look at the eye test, it's not been horrible by any means either. He's a quick guy. He covers a lot of ground. I mean, you have to like overall, and it's an athletic guy, but I do think there's reason to put him back at second base. He had his all-star season there. Now, again, 60 games, but he's shown that he could adjust well to that second base spot fairly quickly. I just think no shortstop for Jazz. No offense to him, but we don't need him back at short.
What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I think we're done
with that hot topic.
It's interesting because obviously Jazz in the lineup is a valuable bat to us, just at least getting productive at bats in. So no matter what, you want to keep him in the lineup, whether we keep him at center field or we keep him or remove him to second base. And I see what you're saying about Dane Myers getting in the lineup. I mean, I feel as if with the season we're having, I guess all bets are off. I guess anything is possible on the table. So I say if the situation presents itself in a more, I guess, organic situation, then I'd say I mean this move to second could make sense.
Yeah, for sure. Let's quickly just finish off this series and talk about Jesus Luzardo. Nate, what did you like about Mr. Luzardo on, I believe this was Saturday afternoon? 8 strikeouts, tying his season high, unable to complete 6, but definitely felt like this was the best start of Luzardo's season thus far.
Definitely, and especially against the Phillies lineup that has a lot of lefties in it, a lot of powerful bats. Definitely looked like Luzardo that we've known from last year and years prior. And like you said, I would say it was his best start of the season as well, mixing his pitch as well. And really keeping hitters off balance, I liked a lot. He did a lot of what Ryan Weathers did against the Dodgers. Luzardo mirrored that against the Phillies, I'd say.
And Kretschik, we were kind of talking about this, we were covering that game, and it was a lot of good placements with the slider, specifically. A lot of all 8 of his strikeouts were swinging strikeouts, which definitely stood out. I mean, just talk to us about that pitch selection that he went with, not just the selection, but the placement.
Yeah, Luzardo had 2 strikeouts to Bryce Harper. Those are the only 2 strikeouts that he threw to lefties. Are you guys able to hear me?
We have you on like a 5-second delay.
Maybe if you want to leave and join again.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I don't know why. I'm like one of those field reporters. All right, let me leave. I'll come back.
Yeah, I'll just say that he looked like his 2023 version of himself. I think that's a good observation about those sliders down and in. As long as he's ahead in the count or not behind in the count, as long as the count is even, he can get guys to chase in that situation. It's a really special pitch. That both of his slider and his changeup, those are plus pitches when they're on, that they started as strikes and then they dip out. That was a changeup right there. So yeah, that's what makes him such a tantalizing talent, and what made it so strange when he's not pitching well. The fact that he had a 4-week stretch to start the year the way he did with like an ERA near 7, that was the anomaly. Usually when he's on, it's going to look a lot like this. He's going to be, it's just a question about whether he's an above average starter. Is he like a number 3, or is he somebody that is on that border between number 2 and an ace? And for a lot of last year, he was the latter. And so the question is, exactly if he could get back to last year, or if there even is a higher level for a guy that's just 26 years old. There's a reason why for the Marlins to potentially move him, they'd be asking for the moon and the stars, because there's just not a lot of pitchers available that are like this that still have room to get even better.
Alrighty, let's move on to quick talk about Josh Bell. And I like that Nate mentioned him. He had that home run, and I believe it was that last game on Sunday. But I mean, it looks like he's turning the corner, folks. I mean, this last month of May, 270, 400, 460 with an 860 OPS, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, 6 walks. Krutchik, talk to us a little bit about Mr. Josh Bell. What are you liking out of his approach at the plate? I know defensively it's been tough for him, but definitely looking like the veteran self that Josh Bell is in. I mean, how much does this help the Marlins in terms of the possibility of moving him at the deadline? This is a guy who I believe is the highest paid player on the team, and they gotta move him some way, somehow, if you're trying to make that type of a deal. And poor play isn't gonna exactly help, but good play like the one we've seen this last month, along with maybe taking part of that contract, definitely will.
Yeah, that's really where his value is going to be as a guy who's on an expiring deal. And if he can just get that power back, that's why Miami brought him in. And that's what he was severely lacking early in the season, where even when he was getting the bat on the ball, it wasn't really going anywhere. Now he's getting those extra base hits, and that's really what I was looking for the most. It wasn't just the batting average for me that was concerning me in April. It was the fact that he wasn't getting any power behind it. It's still not completely there, but it's definitely better than it was.
Nicholas, anyone else who stood out to you this series for the Marlins before we move on to a couple roster moves that went down yesterday as well as today?
Braxton Garrett's return definitely lightened the mood to what's been this season so far. Seeing him after the first inning settle down, get the strikeouts, reminded me, just showed flashes of what he did last year for us. That was a very reassuring thing. So I tip my cap to him for what he did yesterday.
All right, let's move on to a couple injury notes. I guess not really injury, but the only injury we have note of, which is Tim Anderson going to the 10-day IL with lower back tightness. This occurred originally on Saturday. He was in the lineup, gets scratched. Not in the lineup on Sunday, not in the lineup today. We saw the move of Tristan Gray getting called up or contract selected. George Storiano goes into IL, paving way for AJ Puck to join this team. Eli, you wrote a whole article on this. It was our most viewed article this last week. So talk to us a little bit about what's been going on with Tim Anderson, and if you kind of got time to plug your article here,
Yeah, I don't. That was almost a full week ago, kind of raising the red flags that, wow, this is just as bad as it was last year. Just to remind people, the status that Tim Anderson had at this time last year, early on last year, where I think most people still regarded him as a borderline all-star player, or at least somebody that was a slam dunk good everyday shortstop, if nothing else, offensively. And for him to be somehow worse than he had been last year, like, that is something that is unacceptable and like just really baffling. That last year, what the explanation was in hindsight, that he was just playing through these injuries, and especially to his legs, that it all started with that not being able to swing the way that he was accustomed to doing it, and not using all fields quite the same way, certainly not running the same way. And that all those things, when it combines with the fact that he's always been a very aggressive, you could say over aggressive hitter, that these players just don't usually age very well, that have that aggressive profile. You got to mature as a hitter and make better decisions. What the big drop off I saw even from last year to this year is how he's producing against fastballs, especially in his prime. He was one of the better hitters in baseball against fastballs. He could catch up with any velocity and he could hit line drives against them. And this year, like he's has turned into a huge weakness of his game. I've noticed that even when he gets into favorable counts, like that is usually such a big factor for how hitters do, is if you're getting ahead in the count, if you're in a situation where you have the advantage over the pitcher and you get to swing at only the pitches you're comfortable swinging at. And I just found all these examples where he's up 3-1 in the count. He gets a fastball down the middle, some would say, and he just damage against it. He either whiffs on it or he hits it straight into the ground. So the overall numbers kind of speak for themselves on here. He finally dipped below a 200 batting average. I think that is really that's like the line of demarcation for probably why people weren't, in my estimation, properly recognizing this as an issue, is that you still got a fair share of singles. And when there's a 2 in front of it instead of a 1, that average, it doesn't jump out the same way. But he's been in the low 200s all year before finally dipping under. And the thing is, it's just not getting better. It would be one thing if it was just a slow start to the season, a slow April. But he's been worse in May than he was in April. So that's kind of where we got to this point where there's just no sign of things getting better. There's no signs of him getting unlucky either. Like when he was putting balls in play, they were finding holes a good amount of time. He just doesn't hit the ball hard. He hasn't hit a home run in like a year and a half, if not more than that. So yeah, clearly something was off. And hopefully some of it is just attributable to the back injury. If nothing else, I was a big advocate of just giving him a breather, some time off. Now he'll get at least a week and a half to hopefully get healthy and also just make some adjustments. Like this is just not a slow start. This was a declining player that needs to make adjustments, and it's probably overdue that he gets back into the lab and rethinks about how he wants to approach his at-bats in order to do damage, or at least to like keep his career around. Because if he has a whole year batting this way, he could be out of the league surprisingly quickly for somebody that was an all-star just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Sucks for the Marlins. You would think this would be the ideal bounce back candidate guy, and just really hasn't turned out like that. But let's talk about AJ Puck. Returns from the IL. This time we'll be going back to the bullpen. Nicholas, talk to us about what your original thoughts were, when you heard the news AJ Puck would be a starter, and then talk to us about your thoughts when he when it was announced he would be returning back to the bullpen after his couple rehab starts or appearances.
So first, hearing about AJ Puck becoming a starter, I was optimistic. He did it at the University of Florida, where he not for a prolonged period. And now we give him the fair opportunity. Sadly, it did not work out as we thought it would. But in the situation that we were in, we had to give him an opportunity. I don't really think we had another option per se as another starter arm. Which I understood. But now with him going back to the bullpen, I think that'll definitely help his numbers and help us out. We brought him in last year for bullpen, and he was pretty good with us bullpen wise last year. So.
Yeah, Krawczyk, I know you did a lot of deep dives on Mr. Puck during spring training, even when the season started. You spoke to him, I believe, a couple times. Just take us through the AJ Puck starter experience, what may have gone wrong, and what excites you the most about him returning to a bullpen, which, I think the Marlins really need this guy in there, especially, with how Soriano's kind of struggled this season. Now he's back in AAA. Nardi's really been struggling, and you're relying on names like Birch Smith to come in there and then kind of give you those high leverage innings, which you were getting from someone like Andrew Nardi last season.
Yeah, AJ Puck was one of those guys that stood out to me in spring training because it seemed like this idea that he was going to be a starter, it looked like it was actually going to work. He looked really good in spring in all of his starts except for one. His bullpens all looked really good. Everyone that I asked around, including Skip can be candid sometimes, as can Mel Stottlemyre. And They said, no, he looks really good. And the new pitches that he added look really good. Usually you'll see a guy add a pitch, like one pitch over the offseason, and it looks okay. Puck added 3, and they all looked really good in bullpens, and they all looked pretty good in ranging from serviceable to pretty good in actual games. He added a sinker, a cutter, and a changeup on top of the sweeper that he already throws. And guys that I spoke to said they all look good. And it's unheard of for someone to just bring in one pitch, much less 3. And then he never really lost velocity. That's the other thing that you look at. It's the repertoire. Does the repertoire look better? Because you have to add pitches when you become a starting pitcher, when teams are seeing you 3 or 4 times a game. But then also you have to make sure that your velo doesn't go down. His velo didn't go down either. He looked really good. Like, I was standing by this the entire time. AJ Puck is going to be a good starter. That did not happen. He looked really bad as a starter. I'm trying to pull up the stat right here. What killed him was the walks. Like, I don't know what went wrong with the walks. His walks per 9, his first year in Miami last year were 2.1. So he was walking a couple guys per 9 innings. It ballooned up to like video game type numbers to 11.2. He was walking 11.2 guys every 9 innings. I don't know, and maybe Eli or Kevin or maybe you guys know this. Why would a guy start walking a whole lot more guys just because they're pitching, like more guys on a rate basis, just because they're throwing more innings? Like, how did this happen that he's just walking so many more guys?
I think it's almost an unanswerable question in this, particularly because some of those starts that happened early in the game too. It would be easier to explain if it happened the second time through the order or the third time. The most vivid memory is when he made his season debut. I think that was like only in the second inning of his start where he walked, the bases loaded, and then he walked in a run, where it wasn't even an issue of like tiring deep into the games. It became a point where almost immediately that velocity that for whatever reason he was maintaining in spring starts didn't carry over to the real games. And it's really difficult to like put your finger on it. I do like second what you said about how just because this failed spectacularly doesn't mean it was the wrong idea to experiment with it. He put in the work. He showed a lot of the measurables that you look for entering the season, and it didn't carry over. And I don't think it precludes him from potentially being a starter in the future. But clearly something was off right now, and this is the right thing to do for the team in this situation to make sure that at least he's can be successful in this relief role, just get back to where he was last year for starters, and then try to build off that again at some point. But I think we'll take it step by step. I just would not be surprised if he starts games again later this season. As bad as things went, you look at this rotation right now, and it's Lazardo and Braxton, who just came back from injury, both of those guys. It's Ryan Weathers, who's fine, and then it's a bunch of question marks beyond that. So like there's going to be opportunities for starters, and you don't have to go that far down the list before saying, hey, maybe trying Puck over again is an appropriate option right here. But yeah, for the meantime, I'll be very interested to see him get back on track. And as with everybody else, we got to look through it through the prism of a trade candidate, that if he does have a great month that looks like the first half of last year, then all of a sudden he'll be very desirable by teams across the league.
And that's the thing too, because you tell yourself, I mean, like he adds all his pitches. And again, that's why I keep telling myself, maybe he will start at some point again, maybe not now because they don't really need it, unfortunately. But this is a guy, I mean, what we saw during spring training was not, BS. It wasn't a fake. Like this guy was legit. He was going 5-6 innings every start, and he was dotting 97, 98, and he was looking really good. The pitches were moving well, everything. And I know, again, I mean, you're going up against like guys who were quadruple A players at one point during the game, but everything looked great. I think some of us on the staff chose Puck to be the season MVP. That's how good we thought he was going to be. But we'll move on to Tristan Gray. Anyone else have anything on Puck before we wrap up here?
Yeah,
well, I do just want to. Sorry, Nate. Rather,
Go ahead.
I don't want to be completely negative. Like AJ Puck was pretty good in his closer role for a couple months last year before he started to struggle. But then when they brought him back as a seventh and sometimes eighth inning guy, mostly seventh inning guy, he found a pretty good role there. The sweeper is still nasty. Like the sweeper is still the sweeper. I'm very excited to see that again. I do think that there's obviously he's still a great pitcher. I think my confidence in him never faltered last year. So I'm still excited to see what role he can be in, especially in a bullpen that doesn't have a whole lot of defined roles yet.
Yeah, exactly. Building off that, I was going to say, I think you can get a pretty important role in the bullpen pretty quick, I'd say. If he just goes out there, did what he did for the first half of last season, then especially you mentioned his new pitches, he's thrown his sinker 20% of the time, and he's used his slider 9% of the time. And when Puck got hurt last year is because hitters were sitting on his fastball. If he can mix those pitches in, I think he can have some great success in the seventh or eighth, and then trade value on an order to be back to a starter. But I'm, like Puck said, AJ Puck's still a really good pitcher. I'm excited what he can do in the bullpen.
Yep. Alrighty. Let's move on to Tristan Gray. He was added to the roster yesterday. He was called up just in case Tim Anderson may have not been able to go. Unfortunately, that was the case. It lands on the 10-day IL. Tristan Gray up. George Soriano goes to AAA Jacksonville once again. Nate, talk to us a little bit about Tristan Gray. This is a guy who really stood out there in spring training, made a great case to kind of crack this opening day roster at one point, plays you every infield spot. So definitely gives someone like a Josh Bell, a Jake Berger, a little more flexibility to DH whenever they need to. And, definitely a guy who gives you that power aspect to the lineup that they really need.
Yeah, like you said, yeah, he had a great start. He had the first home run of the spring for the Marlins, I believe. And I think his first month overall was really encouraging. But the problem with him has always been his strikeout rate. You saw in his first at-bat yesterday, he does strike out a lot, which is the only downside for him. But he is powerful. He can play anywhere in the infield, like you mentioned. I still want to see Bruhan get at-bats over him because Bruhan's been, when you give him everyday chances, he's been looking really good. But especially in Detroit, didn't give him a good chance to see what he's about. I don't know how long he's going to be up for, but like you said, he has that power. It's just he didn't get the ball and play more. Then you like what you see more from Tristan Gray.
Yeah, what definitely sucks with Tristan Gray is that this season, particularly in AAA, it's the high. We could talk about the strikeout percentage, and it's because it's been the highest it's ever been in his career. It's like 36%, close to 37. So it's not changing. The walk percentage kind of the same, but it's really that profile where he's either going to strike out or he's going to hit like a bomb. And this guy, at the start of the season, this guy was hitting it every other day. So definitely going to be an interesting player defensively. I know we spoke about this a little bit, but Eli, just talk to us defensively what to expect from Tristan Gray. Really plays everywhere. Saw a lot of reps at shortstop specifically during spring training. We know this was early on when there was no Tim Anderson. This was going to be one of the options maybe to make that opening day roster. And then obviously Tim Anderson joins in. That spot goes to TA.
Yeah. His greatest strength defensively is just that versatility to play all those infield spots. I wouldn't say he's a clear upgrade over TA at shortstop. He's less athletic. There's not going to be any of those jump throws to his backhands. But overall, he's okay. He's okay, maybe a little bit below average at that spot. I would think that he's going to – I just don't think he's going to get very much playing time, to be honest with you. The fact, as you mentioned, there's just not a whole lot of reason to believe he's going to be an effective hitter at the big league level because if he's striking out that much at AAA, and this is like his fourth year at AAA, then it shows there are just pretty fundamental holes in his swing and his approach. And in the big leagues, when they scout you more closely, that it's only going to go up. It's only going to be more swing and miss right there. So I just don't think he's going to be starting very many games, to be honest with you. He's somebody that will pinch hit against some righties in place of maybe there's a situation where, God, who are we like Nick Fortes or Bethancourt, maybe late in a game situation. If it's a close game, he'll pinch it for one of the catchers if he has a platoon advantage, and he'll get like, I will just throw it out there. Maybe he starts Wednesday's game, the series finale, the getaway day on a Wednesday afternoon. But overall, it could be a pretty short stint. He'll probably be the guy that seems to be in line to get squeezed off when TA comes back, if he comes back relatively soon. So yeah, I don't want to get people overhyped about it. It's all about the power. He has plus power, and from an infielder that's enticing. But yeah, we'll just take it one plate appearance at a time with him. And overall, it's good that he made it back up to this level. But he'll have to perform to stick around. And honestly, I can't tell you that I'm that optimistic that he's going to perform well.
Yeah. Alrighty. Before we're going to flip fish, I think we're going to start doing this for almost every series, just given the state of the Marlins at this point. We're going to do trade talk, at least for every team that, they'll face. So this time, Marlins and Tigers. Let's start with Nicholas. What stands out to you about these teams as potential trade partners? Who do you think the Tigers could use, and who stands out to you on their side? It could be minor league system as well, because I think that's what this is at this point in the rebuild, or not rebuild, but what the Marlins are trying to do here with Peter Bendix, and I guess you could say rebuild. They're going to be looking for a prospect package in return for most of these guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because a lot of the Tigers, I guess, like big name prospects that are obviously now on the roster now, trying to establish themselves as everyday starters. Torkelson, Riley Green, they've opened the season okay, but like I know like homers they're struggling with as well. I believe Torkelson hit his first home run yesterday, and obviously of how high of a draft pick the Tigers obviously had for him, you expect to see, I guess, a more impact bat. And just with the Marlins themselves, I mean, it's hard to say. I'm going to be honest. It's tough.
Yeah, for sure. Krutchik, I think a name that I think a lot of Marlins fans are going to be expecting to hear is Jesus Luzardo or Tanner Scott. And those are two guys who I think Detroit would use a lot. I mean, you have Tanner Scott who would go into that Detroit bullpen, which has been really good for the most part this season. We'll touch on that a little bit after the break. But talk to us about Jesus Luzardo, what he could provide to a Detroit starting five, which has kind of been, kind of hurt a little bit with injuries to start the season, and now is when they're kind of getting fully healthy. But adding someone like Luzardo would immediately put him and Tarek Skubal as, a great 1-2 punch.
Yeah, I think so. I think they, sorry, I think they could use a lot out of Luzardo. I think he is the kind of guy that can really lengthen a rotation. He can be someone's ace, like the Marlins hope that they would see this year. But also, you saw it last year where Sandy was the ace and Luzardo as your number 2 guy makes it a fantastic rotation. More than that, I don't know if Detroit is one of those farm systems where you would want to trade more to get more from them. But I would love to see what they can get for Tanner Scott, just because he's such a good pitcher, but we know where this season is headed for the team. You obviously don't need a closer when you're not planning on winning a whole lot of games. I mean, how often have they used Tanner in the past week? They used him for 2 innings yesterday because he hasn't taken the field in 7 days because they're not winning a lot of games. And if they had put him in, a lot of times it would only be because they want to get him some work in. So I would love to see them. See what they can get for someone like him, especially further down the stretch as teams are more desperate to bolster their bullpen.
And even now, because this is a guy in Tanner Scott who is on a 1-year deal. He's a pending free agent. You would hope maybe they would trade him as soon as they could to get the best possible package. The team that's receiving Tanner Scott would have him for a little bit longer. They could figure out their bullpen situation a lot quicker. But Nate, talk to us a little bit about the top prospects on this Detroit Tigers team. They're pretty damn good. You have a Jackson Jobe, Max Clark, Jace Jung, you have Ty Madden, and then it goes on and on. It's a pretty good farm system for the most part. I know you're a pretty good farm head here for us. What stands out to you there, and what could a possible return, from Detroit look like in this case for any of these?
The Tigers are really, at least they're top. They're really top heavy. Like you said, Max Clark, stand out from last year, of course. You said Jackson Jobe, of course. But the only problem is the Tigers have a lot of arms in there. Like the most of their top 10 is filled with a lot of pitchers. But one guy that I did like is Justin Henley Matherway. The Tigers started him for the Braves a couple of years back. Can play all over the field from what I know. 55 hit, 50 power. If you give up a guy like Luzardo or maybe Braxton Garrett or like you said Tanner Scott, he'd be intriguing. And someone else, Dylan Dingler, the Tigers number 12 prospect. He's a catcher. I know him from his Ohio State days. Powerful guy, good defender, and we know the problem that the Marlins have had with their catching position recently. So I wouldn't say you get like a Max Clark or a Jace John or one of those guys, or even a Ty Madden or a Kevin McGonigal. All those guys are very good players. But Henry Mallory is someone I'd like to see if they would do it, or Dingler as well. They could be interesting guys.
Yeah. I see this more as a Josh Bell team than anybody else. As Nicholas touched on, like Torque has not been good this year, and that is if they suck up their pride and send him down at some point, or at least are willing to reduce his playing time, like that's an easy place to improve. I mean, the other big weakness is shortstop, but the Marlins have nothing to offer in that regard to match up. But Bell, as we covered, he has been in recent weeks looking a lot like his normal self. He's a pending free agent. He's not going to get you as much back as Tanner Scott will. He just fits their needs a little bit better. This is a team we'll get into. They're a 500 team. They're not going to go that far into trying to win now, and they're not going to sacrifice any of their key prospects unless it is a Luzardo blockbuster or something like that. But I think Bell is the more probable one between first base and DH. Kerry Carpenter DHs. He's a great platoon guy, but especially against some lefties, there are at bats over there, and Bell is a switch hitter. So to me, that is the highest probability fit, is sending Bell there. They've shown a willingness in the Arise trade to eat the money still owed to them in order to get a better prospect return. In Bell's case, you got to eat almost all the money to get anything in return, even if he's trending in this positive direction. So it's an unsexy match, but I think that is going to be the best match potentially between these teams, that the Marlins eat most of the money left to him and they salvage something prospect-wise in return that could help them in the future, even if it's somebody all the way at the bottom of their top 30 or somebody that might be just outside of the Tigers' top 30. Just getting anything in return in this situation would be a win.
Yep. Alrighty, let's go into our flipped fish before we head into the break. Eli, I'll let you take this one away because you definitely said it was a difficult one for us, at least.
Relatively hard. Yeah, not impossible. It's a somewhat high-profile player. Right here is a Venezuelan infielder who played from 2002 to 2016. 17 WAR in his career, a 271 hitter. Yeah, he played a decent amount for both of these teams in the middle of his career, but some others outside of that. So yeah, think it over. Look at these hints right here. And on the other side of the break, we'll reveal who this is. We'll get more into the series itself, the starting lineups, and of course, prediction time. So stick with us here on FLF Live.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Somebody in the comments got it. Do one of you guys know who this is?
I think.
Let's get Nicholas.
Yeah.
Go for it, Nate.
I want to say Omar Infante. That's my guess, but I don't know.
Yes, sir. Omar Infante, former All-Star. I think he was that guy that the Royals fans forced into the All-Star game in like 2015 when all their guys got voted in. Oh no, that was in 2010 with the Braves. He did go to the Royals at the very end of his career though. But yeah, right. I'd say like he was near his best in 2012. He was one of the only good things about the first half 2012 Marlins, and then they dealt him with Anibal Sanchez to the Tigers.
I think he was on that Royals the 2015 World Series team, right, for the Royals?
Yeah, he was on that team. I thought for some reason that that was the year where their fans went crazy in the All-Star voting. They didn't vote him in, apparently, now that I see it. I guess he was he was too washed at that point for them to get enthusiastic. But yes, he did win a ring with them. Did he? Let me check this out. He didn't play in those postseason. I don't know. He was on them during the regular season, but wasn't around for the postseason run that year.
Alrighty. Marlins, Tigers. Last time these two teams faced off was in Lone Depot Park. I believe the Marlins ended up taking 2 out of 3. They did take 2 out of 3 because I believe the Tigers won that middle game or that first game in there. But this Detroit team is no slouch. They're 20-20 right now. They're a pretty damn good ball club, good pitching. Bullpen has been really nice. Nate, what stands out to you about the Tigers?
They're a very young team, like everyone's mentioned, very young, and they have some very, very nice pieces. Not so much Spencer Torkelson, who we've already talked about, but Riley Green, man, has been really good this year. Was really good last year as well. You have the interesting case that is Javi Baez, who has kind of fallen off a cliff, and they have a lot of young guys. Kerry Carpenter, forgetting someone else, but they're very interesting. They're hovering right around 500, like it says right here, and it's not like you said, no slouch. They have former World Series manager AJ Hinch, so it should be a good test for the Marlins, I'd say.
Nicholas, Riley Green is having himself one hell of a season. Leads the team in OPS plus at 144, 9 home runs, 18 RBIs. And this is a guy that the Marlins could have drafted a couple of years back. When you look at it, what are your thoughts on Riley Green?
It's always I guess a painful memory seeing like what could have been if the Marlins drafted like Riley Green or another prospect like that. I mean, Riley Green he's slowly coming to his own in Detroit. He's like, look at his numbers this year. He's doing well for what they've been asking of him. And overall, I just hope. I mean, hopefully he doesn't do as well against us. But no matter what, being a player that he is, I want all players to have a good career, and I think he can definitely have that.
Yeah, for sure. Already quickly, I'm as you kind of start looking through his team, one of the standouts has been Mark Canha. He's having himself a great season for them. Third on the team in OPS plus at a 128, already with 6 home runs, 20 RBIs. We'll go into lineups in just a second, but I mean, Alex, what else stands out to you about this Detroit team? Canha gets traded from the Mets over here. I believe that was more of a salary dump trade, I want to say, or he got traded from Milwaukee to Detroit, I think it was, and he has kind of turned it into his own. He's been really good.
Yeah, that's always a good story. I really like Mark Canha just as a person. I thought he was a very fun guy to follow in New York. So I'm glad to see him performing better for a smaller market team. Yeah, it seems like Detroit is finally starting to reach that weird midway point in a rebuild where they're obviously figuring it out a little bit. They're competitive in each game, at least coming into it. But they're still, they're not really hitting that well. Maybe it'll be a good get-right series for some of these Marlins pitchers. But yeah, I think that they're a fun young team to watch. They kind of remind me, not as individuals on the team, but just as a team itself, they kind of remind me of the Nationals, where they're like just a year away from being a year away, and it's going to be fun to watch some of these young guys in the early parts of their careers.
The reason why I wanted to show at the very bottom the single game progression throughout the year is because they got off to a hot start, and they pretty quietly have been slumping over the last week and a half. They've lost 7 out of their last 10, 7 out of their last 9 recently. Their offense has been really hit or miss. They do rely pretty heavily on Riley Green and occasionally on Kerry Carpenter. And Mark Canha has been fine. I guess he raises their floor a little bit, but that entire bottom half of the lineup, I guess we could get into the lineup now. It has not been a deep lineup for most of this season because they continue to play Spencer Torkelson pretty much every single day. They continue to play Javi Baez almost every single day. We have not mentioned him, but he has been as horrible as ever over this entire contract. He's just steadily gotten worse and worse offensively. He's still smooth at shortstop defensively, but it drops off so fast from that top 4 in that lineup to everybody else. So that is going to be something to watch this entire series, is how not just the starter, but how Skip goes to his bullpen and specifically picks out guys where no matter what inning it is, he's going to go to his most trusted relievers, I imagine, when the top few guys in the lineup are coming up, and then save his lower leverage guys for the easier task of going to the bottom half. It's an interesting team, and it's certainly a better team than the Marlins, but I think that's something they have in common, where it's not a really deep lineup. There are easier landing spots as you go through it.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty, let's take a look at this Marlins lineup before we go into more of the Tigers. Jazz obviously leading it off for the Marlins. Kind of a similar lineup to what we've started to see these last couple of days. Not really much more to go into, but Krutchik, I'll let you talk about Sixto. Right before the stream, you said he didn't look as bad as he did in his last start. So take us through that and what to expect from Sixto. He's actually this is a favorable matchup for him in terms of the ballpark he's in. Very pitcher friendly. This is not an easy park to hit it out. So this should be hopefully Sixto's best start since returning.
I would hope so. Let me pull up these first inning stats for Mr. Sixto. His MO this season when starting has been that he gets his stuff just lit up in the first inning. Then he actually settles down. It's very strange, very weird. But in his last start, before the stream, I said that Sixto has looked better of late. And then I quickly corrected myself and said, well, the first inning, he just didn't get lit on fire. So to me, in his last time out, so to me, that is an improvement. Let me see here. He's it's running very slow. I just remember his first start in Atlanta. What did he give up? Like 5 runs in the first inning?
It was that first start in Atlanta. I think it was only a couple, but that included when he balked in a run in that to get his starting career back on track in a very awkward way. And what makes this start a little unusual is that he is on a lot of rest. He has not pitched in over a week. They skipped him. They inserted both Braxton and Luzardo into the rotation in front of him. And so I was a little confused about exactly what the thinking is right there. I think the bottom line is that this is one of those easier matchups that you can get at this point. And if he doesn't show the capacity to get through 5 innings on this extra rest against this lineup that can sometimes be like playing to your strengths and let you get through your innings relatively quickly. Like if he can't have success there, then you really, there's not much reason to like keep going with this experiment that much longer. Unfortunately, I think what's been missing, even when he's looked on his sharper side, is that he's still not missing bats at a high level. This is somebody that he was the best prospect in the organization at one point and one of the best in baseball because he had attributes of being a power pitcher, that he had secondary pitches he could go to strike you out, not just relying on his velocity, but he had a great changeup. He had a solid slider. And now those pitches just do not play the same. They just do not get chases out of the zone. They don't miss bats very much. And like really the reason, the only thing that you're kind of leaning on at this point is that more reps and getting back into the flow of being an actual baseball player again after not being the last few years, that he'll just get better somehow. But what he's shown like so far, it just doesn't look like a major leaguer. It looks more like a AAA pitcher whose stuff is just not quite as nasty as what you normally need to overpower major league hitters. But yeah, again, we'll see. There's a lot for him riding on this start, in my opinion.
I have the stats for it if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
In 3 games as a starter, he's given up 7 runs. That's a 21 ERA. Teams are batting .500 against him with a 1350 OPS. And then in the second and third inning combined, he's allowed 1 run in 3 games. So if he can just get out of the first inning today, I think he's got a shot.
Oh, yeah. Not going to be an easy first inning. You have Riley Green, Mark Canna, and Wencel Perez, who I assume is one of their prospects. This, I think, as Eli mentioned earlier on, this is a very top-heavy lineup. It's really bad when Javi Baez is hitting 8th. And then Carson Kelly, former Diamondbacks catcher, was actually pretty solid during his time. Nicholas, what stands out to you in this Detroit lineup? Definitely a lot of young players that are going to be fun to watch during these next 3 days.
Javi Baez in the 8-hole is always a sight to see, especially with how he's performed, obviously, in the past year since signing the contract with the Tigers. Carson Kelly being the starting catcher for them, that just hits close to home for me. Their backup catcher, Jake Rogers, is from Tulane. I'm a graduate of Tulane, so it's a hometown, I guess, in a way, hometown feeling for Mr. Jake Rogers himself, even though I didn't get to see him play there. But apart from that, just the top lineup of the Riley Green leading the way. makes sense. And if you're a Tigers fan, you wouldn't have any way of having Riley Green leading you out there.
Yep. Nate, anything else for you? Either lineup works here, just as we start to wrap up real quick.
Not so much. It's pretty much everything Nicholas said about Riley Green. He's really coming to his own this year. So hopefully not against the Marlins, but I'm excited. It's always exciting to see a guy like that play.
Yeah. I'll just quickly circle back. Marcelo DeVivo brought up in the chat about Brian De La Cruz as somebody that might be a trade fit between these organizations as a DH/corner guy potentially. If they move Riley Green back to center and then plug DLC in left, or they play Kerry Carpenter more in left and bring DLC as DH, like that would be I think on the higher end. I think I see that more as I can see that happening. If you actually want to extract one of their top 15 prospects, if not a little bit more than that, I mean, DLC is the one that could give them some offense for several years to come, and also somebody that, as I've advocated in the past, about potentially selling high on DLC, just given the other limitations to his game. But this is his so this is a good audition for him these next few days. Him playing in that ballpark. First time he's ever done it. I mentioned on Twitter, the Marlins have not been in Comerica Park in 5 years. So for a lot of guys on this Marlins lineup, they've never played here before. Some of the exceptions are Josh Bell and Berger and Gordon, just because they were on AL Central teams before they came.
Tim Anderson, but he's not. Yeah, he's out.
Tim Anderson. Not
it took me a second to realize why I didn't mention him. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, but for a few of these other guys, for Jazz, for DLC, for Sanchez, and for Otto Lopez, for I don't know if Vidal Brujan at some point has stopped by, but for a lot of these guys, this is a new thing to get acclimated to.
Last thing we'll touch on right before we do prediction times, their starter, Matt Manning. Definitely, I mean, he's a four-seamer sweeper kind of guy with a curveball that he throws in there every little bit, but he definitely a deep pitch mix. Nate, Matt Manning, definitely a guy who has struggled a little bit this season with over a 4 ERA, over a 4 FIP. How do the Marlins attack this guy? You know, the velo's there, and then you have the hard hit percentage, which is also in the red.
Yeah, the velo's there, exactly. And I think the Marlins would want to attack his fastball. His whole career has been very reliant on his fastball, even when he was a prospect, I remember. And if the Marlins can get on his fastball, and we had mentioned, everyone knows Comerica Park, huge, but it's also very spacious also. So the Marlins can get on the fastball and then put the ball in gaps, use their speed to their advantage. I think they could get on him and get on him early, honestly.
All right, Eli. I think we could go into prediction time here. May end in a couple minutes early, but I think we covered everything.
This is prediction time. And I didn't mention it before. Nick has been one of our leading contenders here on our prediction time leaderboard. In our Discord channel, he uses 10 of spades BK and tied for third place on the leaderboard so far this season. Daniel Rodriguez still in front, but it's highly contentious. Nate has been gaining ground. Myself, I have improved ever since I came to terms with the direction that this team is headed in. But yeah, that gives you a glimpse of this stuff. As usual, we encourage people to become a super sub. fishonfirst.com/subscriptions. Hop in the Discord, the private Discord channel that we have for all our super subs. That every single day I put the game notes in there as well to keep you guys updated on as what is going on right here. But yeah, we have a heated competition here for prediction time at this point in the season. And yeah, still a few minutes for people to get in those if they haven't already submitted them on the site or in our Discord channel. But without further ado, let me get our background up and get that music popping in the background. We can start off with Kevin, as usual. Your series MVP.
Well, very quickly, your mic sounds underwater. But before, I think the Marlins will take 2 out of 3 against Detroit. And I'm going to go with Vidal Brujan as my series MVP. He's going to play all 3 games. And Nate really mentioned this, it's a very big ballpark. So he's going to have the chance to really take advantage of those gaps. And he has himself a good opportunity. He's been hot as of late. He's had a good couple of weeks, especially a good month of May. So give me the Marlins and give me Vidal Brujan as my series MVP.
Nate, let's hear your predictions.
Kevin just took my exact prediction and reason. I was going to have Brujan as my MVP for the exact reason is how much space there is in the ballpark. But I'll go with the hot Jazz Jr. as my MVP for the same reason. He can put the ball in the gap. You can see him maybe having a triple this series and maybe putting the ball out the right field. So Marlins 2 out of 3, Jazz MVP.
Your turn, Nicholas Milton. Share your prediction with us.
Well, for me, I love seeing the Marlins win this past Sunday. I still don't think we're turning the corner just yet. I have Detroit winning 2 out of 3 with Kerry Carpenter being the MVP of the series.
Okay. Alex Krutchik, once your delay finishes processing, give us your prediction.
I got Marlins 2 out of 3. I think they ride a little bit of a hot hand against a slumping Tigers team. And I was also going to take Vidal Brujan as my MVP for the same reason that Kevin and Nate had.
Okay. And I will try myself from my unfamiliar surroundings right here on this stream. Tigers winning 2 out of 3. And I'm going with a personal bias here on my fantasy team bench player, Colt Keith. There's no way he can continue being as bad as he has been so far this season. I have him winning MVP. That's his Tigers take 2 out of 3.
All righty. So we'll wrap it up here. It was a fun stream. Finishing it a little bit early, give you some time to get your TVs and turn on Valley Sports Florida. All righty. From Nate, Alex Krutchik, Eli, Nicholas, myself, we'll see you guys on Friday as the Marlins will take on the New York Mets at home, starting a 6-game homestand. We'll see you guys on Friday. And as always, peace out and go fish.